All right, this log is as good as any, I guess. We're back in the swamp, and I wanted to talk to you guys. I received a user story just out of the blue. Someone contacted me, but it's a person who has sent in a story before. So, do you guys remember when we did the Peaker story, the South African cryptid story of the Peaker? Well, I'll put a link down in the description. So it was a story sent in by our friend DB from South Africa. I believe it was around 2012, something like that, the story that he shared, and we did a full video on it. So DB contacted me again, and he sent in something else that happened to him. And he talks about, you know, maybe there being some repression there of this memory, and that recently he's been thinking about it a lot, and it's on his mind, and it's keeping him awake at night again. And he wanted to share this story, and it's about, he sees something that he refers to as another cryptid that I had never heard of before. So I did a bit of research on the cryptid. I also did a little bit of research, kind of fact-checking DB's story, just to see, does it all line up? Does it make sense? So, you know, he could be just writing stories and sending them to me, but I don't think so. I believed his first story. He sent in photos of his dad while they were building the house when these first incidents happened, and I managed to line up something in this story with real world things that were occurring at the time he says they were occurring. We'll talk about that as well. So let me just get right into the email from DB. Hi again, Gary. It's been a few years now since I was featured on your channel. I scrolled through YouTube and found the link, so I'll put the link in the description below. Honestly, I've been having trouble sleeping for a few weeks now because of another story I have from the nature reserve. Ironically, I didn't notice this until just now, but I spoke about it in my last email to you above. Okay, so I don't remember him talking about this, but if you guys go back and watch that, I will go back and watch it and we'll see what he's talking about. I literally have encountered an alien or something once, though African folklore calls it the Tokoloshe. I've been thinking about this lately, and my opinion on what the creature actually was has shifted quite a lot, but I'll get into that in my story. First off, I want to thank you again for sharing my original story. It brought me a type of comfort just writing it out in general, but receiving the opinions of others in the comment section just warms my heart. I'm extremely grateful for you. Now on to the story. Please make sure to censor my name and profile picture. So he actually did leave comments on the last video, and you'll see them in there, DB. Okay, this was around 2013 or 2014 or so. I have so many memories from that time that I'm really not sure at all when it was. I can only judge based on how I was feeling at the time, if that makes any sense. At the time, one of our neighbors, quite literally the nicest guy around, had his house broken into by robbers. They smashed the glass door leading to his patio and broke his arm, before his son and friend came in with big heavy metal chairs and beat them until they ran away. I remember sleeping in my bed when I heard one of our neighbors scream, "Willie's been stabbed." He wasn't stabbed, but that was their interpretation at the time. Because of the recent robbery, we were on high alert. My mom kept telling us about how gangs were robbing farms around the area, and she seemed pretty worried. Because of my dad's job, he had to take a business trip to the United Kingdom for a week or two. We were very scared of robbers breaking into the house at night and essentially locked the whole house down every night. I remember my mom moving our couch from our games room into her bedroom and using it to barricade her door, as my mom was very paranoid, understandably. She decided that we would all sleep in her room until my dad got back, or the gang was caught. They went by the name the Crowbar Gang, if I remember correctly. So I have two brothers. One is older than me by 2 years, and the other is younger than me by 2 years. My older brother was too cool for our nonsense for this first 3 nights or so and slept all by himself in his room. But I think my paranoid mom finally managed to convince him to sleep in her room with us. We had 2 mattresses on the ground, one for me and one for my younger brother. My older brother slept next to my mom in her bed. I've made a very rough layout of my parents' room below. So DB included a photo, and I'll pop that up on the screen. I will also share other things that I found during my research. I'll pop them up on the screen as we're going along. The bottom right bed was the one I was sleeping in that night, with my head facing towards the entrance. There was only one window in the room, and it was opposite the bed in the middle, my mom's bed. I was fast asleep when I woke up at what must have been 2 or 3 in the morning. It was quite dark, and everyone was fast asleep. Realizing that I was unable to sleep after trying for a minute or two, I looked around the room and noticed a blue light just outside the entrance. Now we were on the 2nd floor, and the roof was triangular, so there wasn't any windows outside of the bedroom in the hallway. All the doors for every single room in the house were closed and locked, along with the windows and curtains. This blue light almost looked as though somebody was standing by the entrance with their phone in front of them, illuminating the ceiling. I remember thinking to myself, what's my brother doing now? Looking around the room again, my brother was fast asleep next to my mom. As the light didn't move, I tried to debunk the theories racing through my head whilst trying to fall asleep. The toilet didn't have a window in it, so what could it be? As a few minutes went by, I noticed the light was moving towards me, down the corridor at a really, really slow pace. Like it took 5 whole real-world minutes to move down the entranceway. I was leaning far to my left to see the light at this point, trying to figure out what it was. When the light was getting closer to the half wall, I found myself slowly sitting more and more upright in my bed, without realizing I had moved at all. I felt really afraid that a robber might be about to shoot me in my own bed, so I felt ready to fight them. Quietly, I had gotten out of my bed and moved very slowly to the edge of my parents' bed. I couldn't see the source of light even if I stood up because I was a short kid. When the light was close enough that I could almost even see the source, I felt really, really afraid. I was half expecting to see that my dad had come home early. Suddenly, without making a sound, this black face with white features on it popped up from the right-hand side of the wall, looking right at me. I immediately screamed and broke into tears. Running away, I found myself at the other end of the room trying to find the light switch of the lamp on the dresser in the corner of the room. I nearly knocked the whole damn dresser over and failed to find the light switch. Turning around, to my relief, that creature didn't follow me and seemed to have backed off. Somehow, and I still don't know how, everyone was still fast asleep. I cannot explain to you how afraid I was. There were tears running down my face, and I was just trying to be quiet so I wouldn't wake the family up. Even though I had just seen the creature right in front of me, I knew nobody would believe me and get mad at me for it. Watching the gap between the half wall, I stood for a few minutes, until it became apparent that it was gone. I still didn't feel safe. At first, I slinked into my bed and tried to fall asleep. When I woke up in the morning, everything was totally fine, and nobody even knew what happened. Hell, I wouldn't have believed it was a dream if I hadn't nearly knocked that lamp over and then fallen asleep again. Even typing this story today gives me chills. There are tears in my eyes as I'm typing this right now. I managed to forget about this story for many long periods of time, but recent events have brought it all back. I find myself watching over my back at night. I have a camera that turns on at midnight and turns off at 6 a.m. every night that has watched me sleep every day for an entire year now. I am so paranoid that it's going to come back someday. Fortunately, thank goodness, I don't think it has come back for me in the 10-ish years it has been now. I'm sorry if my story isn't as descriptive as last time. I think my writing style has changed in the last 3 years. Kind regards, DB. So, I want to talk about this because I'd never heard of the Tokoloshe. It's Tokoloshe, Tokoloshe, Tokoloshe. It's pronounced many different ways. So I'm going to refer to this cryptid that I've never heard of as Tokoloshe. I know that some of the sites online refer to it as Tokoloshe, and sorry DB, I'd never heard of this, I don't know, but we're going to stick with Tokoloshe. And here's what I found doing a bit of research on this, okay? The Tokoloshe arrives in the dead of night. It comes causing mischief while preying on unsuspecting sleepers in their beds. The Tokoloshe, a diminutive creature described as a hairy goblin-like being with long ears. Often the Tokoloshe is associated with an African witch doctor who may use the Tokoloshe as his familiar to do the witch doctor's bidding. Tokoloshe are accused of many crimes, such as causing bad dreams, stealing food, and ransacking houses, stealing livestock, to more sinister acts such as stealing people's energy or choking them, and even as far as sexual assault. One version of the legend of the Tokoloshe carries a magic stone charm that makes it invisible to everyone but the witch who it is bound to. It seems that this creature is never associated with goodness or good fortune, only misery, mischief, and hardship. The Tokoloshe is part of many African mythologies, yet its origins remain a debated topic. Some stories describe the Tokoloshe as domestic animals that were transformed by witches, or that are even witches themselves. Other legends say that they are made from graveyard dirt, parts of dead animals, or that the Tokoloshe is in fact an animated doll that has had a hot poker or nail inserted into its head to animate it. All of these origin stories imply dark magic or ritualistic practices. Quite often these legends, no matter the culture, they are based in a reality, right? These stories, whether it's North American natives or South African tribes, they try to explain things that happen in the natural world through stories and legends and folklore, myths. And the Tokoloshe, what they were saying was that a lot of these villages, people would sleep around fires, and they'd go to bed at night and the whole family would be sleeping, and the next morning they would wake up and there would be a deceased member of the family, or sometimes even whole families. And so I'm going to just mention this to you guys from a website that I found, Astonishing Legends, did a bit of a story on this. And I'm just going to read that to you because they talk about how this story could have been based in reality, but then Scientific Gary took it a step further, and we're going to look at what they talk about, and it doesn't really make sense. Let me just, one step at a time, let me just read this to you guys from Astonishing Legends. Today we visit South Africa for a story about the Tokoloshe, a small and terrifying creature that seriously messes with your ability to have a restful night's sleep. Tokoloshes are a creature from Zulu mythology that inhabit South Africa. These creatures attack you in your sleep and are said to be part of the reason while many people in Zulu culture used to sleep with their beds raised off the floor. Tokoloshe are described physically in large variety of ways. One constant seems to be their small size. Sometimes they are described as small humanoid creatures, like gremlins or brownies, and other times they are described more primate-like. These creatures are malevolent and very dangerous. They are said to crawl into sleeping people's rooms and cause all kinds of havoc, from simply scaring them all the way to choking them to death with their long, bony fingers. It seems to particularly enjoy scaring children, often leaving them with long scratches on their bodies. One way to keep the Tokoloshe at bay is to put bricks beneath the legs of one's bed. This will put you out of reach and hopefully out of harm's way of the Tokoloshe. So they're raising their beds up because these are such small creatures that they can't reach you. This is what they're saying. Tokoloshe are creatures called upon by those with magical abilities, like witches, to wreak havoc and pain in a community. One of the ways the witches are able to keep them docile is to cut their hair out of their eyes so they can see and feed it curdled milk. If a Tokoloshe continues to terrorize a household or community, a Sangoma, Zulu witch doctor, is summoned to exorcise the area and or the home with the use of muti, a kind of traditional magic practiced by the Sangoma. But why was a Tokoloshe such a prominent and terrifying creature, and why did it only attack the sleeping? Well, there might actually be a very real terrifying reason for the creation of this creature. Let's back up to the sleeping arrangements quickly. As mentioned above, raised beds are an important way to combat the Tokoloshe. Traditionally, many South Africans in areas rife with Tokoloshe myths slept on grass mats encircling warm wood fires that would keep them warm during the bitter winter nights. However, sometimes healthy people would inexplicably be found dead come morning. Why? Well, the Tokoloshe, of course. But there is a theory that sleeping close to a fire in their homes may have depleted the oxygen levels and filled the home with carbon dioxide. As it is heavier than pure air, it would sink to the bottom of the home where people slept. Thus, seemingly healthy people and sometimes entire families would be found dead. A parallel was found between elevated sleepers and a lack of death, so the Tokoloshe was told as a story forewarning those who slept close to the ground and the fire. Well, it might not be an actual malevolent creature. What kept away a Tokoloshe would also keep away death from carbon monoxide. So, living here in Canada, we heat our homes with wood. Up until I was in my mid-20s, everyone that I knew, even my own house, my parents' house, all my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, we all have wood stoves. Now, yes, these are vented directly outside, but what I want to say is that you would have to fill your entire house with a choking smoke for there to be enough carbon dioxide for there to be a problem, because there's always enough air mixing with what's coming out of the fire. So you would have to leave the door open, the house would fill with smoke, and that has happened many times over the years. From growing up, every day we would come home from school, it was our job to light the fire. If it had gone out, keep it going. And so I did a little bit of research because I wanted to find out, carbon dioxide gas is heavier than air, just slightly. However, the molecular weight and therefore density at the same temperature and pressure of CO2 is only marginally heavier. But when it is heated, it is lighter and the CO2 rises. So when you're burning anything in a fire or a fire pit, CO2 actually goes up first and then it mixes with the air above, as long as you have enough fresh air and you don't have any issues with carbon dioxide. As long as you have airflow in the house or in the hut, you would know, because there would be a choking smoke, right? If there's so much smoke that you can't breathe. Now, if everybody fell asleep, yes, the house could fill in certain instances, but very highly unlikely. But what about CO, carbon monoxide? CO has a specific gravity of 0.9657, while air has a specific gravity of 1. CO has a molecular weight of 28 grams. Because of this, CO diffuses evenly throughout a room or house. This means that you can place a CO alarm anywhere in a room, including a wall or ceiling. So in other words, carbon monoxide does not sink down near the floor. It disperses evenly throughout the room. Again, you would have to be having one heck of a fire with a non-clean burning combustion occurring for there to be enough CO produced. You would have to have a really poorly burning fire and the house would be full of billowing smoke for there to be enough to actually suffocate and kill you. So I also looked into the crowbar gang. Okay, so this is what I wanted to just verify what DB was saying. So I did a quick search, the news in Cape Town, 2014, and I found various articles. And I'll show you guys some pictures, home security pictures of the crowbar gang actually being apprehended and being caught on cameras, and it talking about how many seconds it takes them to rob the home and that you need to be careful. So that was actually a real thing. I verified that. So DB was telling the truth on that. What I found fascinating about this story is that here we are thousands of miles away in Northern Ontario, and I have had the same instance where they talk about waking up being choked. Now, it wasn't a little diminutive creature, it was a woman up at my dad's camp. We've talked about this. And I honestly believe, guys, when I read that, we're probably talking the same thing throughout the world. The choking, right? The bony fingers around the neck. That happens here, you know, not only in North America, but many different countries. And there are many different stories. Native Americans have stories. And I have experienced this myself, guys. We've talked about this. Grant and I both had dreams one night apart up at Dad's camp of someone sitting, kneeling, holding us down, and choking the life out of us while we were sleeping. And it was a woman. In my mind, these things are all tied together, right? Different cultures have different explanations of this, but we are all experiencing the same thing. We're waking up, unable to breathe with a heaviness, and knowing that somebody was holding you down, stopping you from breathing. That and the blue light that DB talks about. When I was a kid, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on this channel, Grant and I were sleeping in my dad's living room, and we looked out onto the front lawn. It was outside, not in, but there was a blue light that came right down into the yard, 40 yards from the house, and we sat up on the pull-out couch, and we were like, what is that? And as kids, we looked at it, we were enthralled, but after 5 minutes, we went to bed. What was that? Okay, he talks about a blue light and having that instance. As an adult, I have seen a blue light a few times in the sky. We've talked about it. These orbs, definitely blue. So did DB see one of these orbs in his house? And so to follow that line of questioning up, because he even says himself right in the first paragraph of this story, he says, maybe it was an alien. And so I sent DB a few questions. Now, if he gets back to me in time, I'll include it in this video. I asked him, has he ever seen a UFO? Has his brothers or any family members ever seen anything like that they couldn't explain? Have any of them ever had any missing time? And I asked him a few questions. So if he doesn't get back to me in time to put it in this video, I will post the questions in the comment section, and hopefully DB will get back and answer them in the comment section. I asked him for a better description of the creature, and I'll show you guys some of the images that I found of what the Tokoloshe could look like online. I mean, there's interpretation is open, right? I just thought it was a cool story. I think DB is a trustworthy source. So I will talk about one more thing, which is the anthropology of these tribes in Africa. In university, first year anthropology, I did have to read a book. I cannot remember the name of it, guys. It was fascinating. It was written by a woman who had gone off and integrated into one of these African tribes in the 1960s. And she talked about the prevalence of witch doctors, curses, voodoo, all of this stuff, positions in society of women, and just the superstitions that these cultures, like, it's unbelievable stuff, guys. One that still sticks in my mind 30 years after university is babies. If you had a baby that was born and when the teeth come in, it was considered extremely bad luck. Like, bad enough that if the top tooth came in before the bottom tooth, they would take the baby and kill it because it was such a bad sign from the gods, or that the tribe or that family had been cursed. They would actually kill the baby. Like, unbelievable stuff, guys. You could curse your neighbors. You know, they had the witch doctors that anyone could go to, and if you didn't like, I remember that there was polygamy in all of these tribes. So if you didn't like your husband's new wife, you could curse her. You know, go down and give a chicken, get a curse put on the new wife. Like, unbelievable stuff that in our society we just can't believe. So there are things that we will never understand coming from our culture, but I really could relate, and it brought me back to that reading that book in anthropology class all those years ago about the African witch doctors and basically voodoo. So let me know your guys' thoughts on this. Had any of you guys heard of the Tokoloshe before? I had never heard of it, but I think it's just another myth and legend that explains things that happen even here in North America. Let me know what you guys think.